telling me that I am unable to start my video.
Okay. Give me 1 second here.
Not that you all have to see me.
Yeah, I'm getting the same read.
Give it 1 second, everybody. It'll let you guys in 1 second. So everybody in the meeting who is a presenter or a panelist, what happens is that in order for you guys to be able to mute and unmute yourself freely, you guys are all made co-host. And so with that responsibility, well, with that authority will come a little bit of level of responsibility because you will also have the ability to end this meeting and change the recording or do anything that's weird and wonky. And so just please be careful that you don't hit any buttons at all throughout the process. But let's give it a second. Everybody will be able to come back on camera in just a sec.
I'm back.
Hey, what's a meeting without a little hiccup?
Hey.
Right. It happens.
It sure does.
It's a test to make sure we're paying attention.
Oh, wow. That's a good one.
And you can't leave the meeting early.
No, stay here. It matters. And once we are all back in the meeting, Mr. Freeman, if you will give the same reminder in just a minute so that everybody understands their privilege as a host.
Okay. Awesome. All right, so I am counting, hang on 1 second, I got one more, and then that will give us the same attendance. All right, welcome back, everybody. Thanks again, and apologize for the interruption. As I shared with the group that was here at the start of our return, everybody has been made a co-host within this Zoom account so that you have the ability to speak freely, unmute yourselves, and actually participate in a meeting. And so with that will come a level of responsibility because on the same hand, each of you will have the ability to stop recording or end the meeting as we just saw, or do anything that's weird and wonky. So actually you just please take a little bit of caution with the way that we all press our buttons throughout this time. All right. So with that being said, Madam Chair, I'll turn it on over to you, and we could, or Alan, and we can keep going.
Are we back under recording now?
We are.
Okay, perfect. All right, Alan, if you would like to take it away.
I'll just recap kind of what I said before. Bree, if you'll go back to the previous slide, if you can, please. So we talked previously in the last meeting about the phase one environmental assessment was complete. We're now in the phase two investigation part. We are aligning our soil and groundwater sampling along with the phase one recognized environmental conditions. The field work has been completed. It's at the lab and the reporting process is starting. We're expecting that work to be done in the next 4 to 6 weeks. We did ask Terracon to take a couple of different more groundwater samples. We paid for those. So sometimes in my experience, when you drill, you hit a rock or you hit it's dry. So we try to get as much groundwater sampling as we could. We have also asked them not to rush the process, but to take the time to make sure we get a good, accurate report. I have no indication in what we have out there, but I think in the next 4 to 6 weeks when the report comes in, we will, if there is anything of concern, we'll get with Terracon and put together a remediation plan. Hopefully nothing comes in of concern, but if it is, we'll take the report and come back to the committee with a remediation plan. The cultural resource assessment, the field work is complete, and they're also doing the reporting now, and that should be available in the next 4 to 6 weeks also. We plan on taking the phase two report, any remediation that's required, combine that with the cultural resource assessment, and then get with David Mitchell over to Atlanta Preservation Center and kind of let him review our reports and make recommendations. So that's the status of the environmental, cultural, and also the preservation. This map here just kind of overlays the soil borings with the master plan. And once again, we did go contradict what Chairperson Clark said about staying in our lane with the 85 acres. We did go ahead and get the borings that align with our original acreage. And so those samples have been taken and they're in the lab also. Tony?
Ms. Clark, my name is Mark Levine. I'm going to tag team this with Tony Kenny, if
Perfect.
that's okay. Great. Well, good evening, everyone. My name is Mark Levine. We haven't met yet. I'm a principal with LS3P. We're the architectural firm that is contracted with APF, the Police Foundation, to design the facilities on the site. And as we get into this next stage, I want to say that in addition to the land development design that Bob has shared with you, I really want to reinforce that it's our collective team's approach to facility design. It always starts with being good stewards of resources in the development of our projects. And included in this effort is our commitment to address these acoustic and other concerns that will develop along the way. So for this project, one of the analysis, as you're aware, that we will be performing to help inform design is an acoustical analysis for both the firing range and the EVOC course, which is the vehicle track previously identified. We are engaging a consultant that specializes not only in acoustical study, but acoustical study for these types of facilities. And ultimately, this analysis that they will engage will help validate and inform design efforts as it relates to acoustic mitigation, minimizing acoustic concerns on the property. I would like to point out a few logistical decisions that have been made in the master plan in support of noise mitigation. And number one, that the firing range is at, and I believe we pointed this out at the last meeting, the firing range is at the far south end of the property, nearly a half mile away from the residential neighborhood. And number two, the facility is also upwards of a couple hundred feet downhill from where the neighborhood resides, and that in itself will help mitigate noise. So as mentioned, the study will help inform design decisions as we take noise into consideration and help guide the direction of the facilities itself. I'd like to now turn it over to my associate, Tony Kenny, who will further describe the study that is about to commence.
Thanks, Mark. My name is Tony Kinney. I'm an architect at LS3P, be the senior project manager on this project, and have been involved with it and taking this noise analysis of the site and also the programming of where things are going to go on the site. You'll notice there are a few images that we'll show you in the next two slides. I just want to be clear that these are not images of this particular property. We have simply asked the acoustical engineer at this point to give us some sample images so that we could show them at this meeting and you guys would see a little bit more about what they do and what their specialty is. We all know that sound is a great effect on our buildings, interior and exterior. We've sat next to a window and heard that loud truck going by and wondered, could somebody not do anything with that? As an architect, yes. You know, there are many different types of glass nowadays. There are many things that we can do from that point. But as Mark said, the acoustical engineer really digs deeper into this and they're really specialists in this particular field. And we felt it would be very important to have them involved in this project. From what you see on this slide, what we're asking them to do and what they propose to do is that they will do test measurements on the site as it exists now. The next slide will show us a little bit about what their equipment looks like. You know, they're going to put these measuring devices around the entire property, and they will have a report that comes from this. They'll have an acoustical model that comes from this. What you see in the upper corner is kind of an analysis point of where they've taken measurements. They'll take them in and around the surrounding communities. And we will ask them after that, after they have done their testing, they'll also do some live testing, ammunition out at the proposed site. They will come back with a report. The most important thing that we like to get from the report, and probably this goes without saying, is we want recommendations from them. We want them to come with noise mitigation strategies. We'll take those all into account as we go forward with our design. We'll bring those to APF and tell them what our findings are. As Mark said, not only is the siting of the firing range important, the type of construction of the range is important. As we will see a little bit later on about how the EVOC course relates to the neighboring street, we believe that the design strategy and what Bob and his team have come up with for a strategy as to how the EVOC course relates to Key Road will be very important as a sound mitigation technique on the adjacent sites. Appreciate it. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Does that close out the entirety of the noise analysis?
That is.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Accordingly, I am going to open the floor to questions from any committee members. If you will, unmute yourselves carefully so that you can ask any questions that you may have.
And this is Sharon. And I noticed we're talking noise mitigation, not elimination. And clearly every community is concerned about the noise, but we're hearing it now with the current firing ranges that are up, and we understand that it is going to be configured differently. In order for us to really assess what is this going to sound like, will it be possible to get sound simulation prior to finalizing the approach?
Sharon, thank you for your question. I can't speak to whether you will get that type of study. What I do know and what I've seen in the site mitigation reports before is a decibel level study that clearly states, so it will tell us what the readings are at specific points around the site, and will give you a decibel reading and what that is in relation to. This is a small dog barking. This is a conversation in a room. This is a being at the airport on the runway. So that is kind of the study. If we would need to break it down more, we can certainly talk about that in the future.
That's fair enough. And is there a maximum decibel that has already been stated?
I have not heard a maximum decibel rating.
Okay, thank you.
Hi, Mr. Kinney, Amy Taylor. You mentioned that they were going to test for ammunition noise. I understand there will also be explosives used on the property and other types of really loud noise concerns happening, such as emergency vehicles and things like that nature. Are they going to test multiple sources or just gunfire?
I think a good thing that has come from these types of discussions that have happened, and from what I've heard and what I've read on the history of the project, the explosives aspect of the site has been removed from the program, so it will not take place at this property. I really want to make that clear because I think some people have heard differently, and I realize that that's just information that kind of gets said and gets hung on to, but it will not occur at this property. So I want to make that clear. In terms of the other vehicles that are on the site, Marshall would have to speak more into what actual noises will take place with those vehicles. But we are talking about, and Bob will be able to show the site plan, all of the activities that are happening that are with the larger vehicles or with the police vehicles around the farthest southwestern portion of the site. And we have that significant buffer adjacent to the property. I don't know if there's anything else that you want to share, Marshall, or any experience you may have.
Sure. I will just add again to Tony's point, and I think Bob spoke a lot about this on our last call, but like we've said the entire time, we have been listening to the concerns of the community. We have been hearing this committee, and every single step of the way, we have been adjusting our programming to reflect that. And so the removal of the explosives from the site was something that, again, we knew that the concerns were there regarding the noise and the impact to the community. And so we, again, pride ourselves on being good stewards, as you guys have continued to hear. And we have taken that programming completely out of the site. So the only, again, potential noise would be from the firing range, in which we have this noise analysis that will be conducted, and it will take place to, again, as Tony said and referenced, it will tell us what we will hear, again, in the surrounding communities, but more importantly, make recommendations for how we can continue to reduce the decibels and the impact to the surrounding neighborhoods. And then secondly, he also referenced that it will also, again, take into consideration the emergency vehicle operations course, which is still a part of the programming, in which we will also do the analysis there to understand the impact. But I do want to clarify that when you talk about vehicular noise, what you're talking about is just a vehicle, and you're not talking about, emergency vehicles in, lights and sirens mode. This is an actual place in which they're training how to park or how to steer or how to move or maneuver a vehicle. And it's not rushing to the scene of an accident, which is completely different.
Well, thank you. I appreciate both of your responses. Definitely good news. I haven't heard any of those things as of yet. So, that's good news for this evening. Thank you.
I have a question for Tony.
Can you identify yourself, please?
I'm sorry, this is Ann Phillips.
Thank you.
Fire and rescue during their training in the past used microphones that were quite loud. And they always seemed to be, atop of the building. And a lot of times they were training late evenings. So this is another noise factor that should be considered. And if you have considered it, how do you plan to kind of keep the noise down so that it doesn't disturb the residents?
Thank you, Ann. We are at the very early stages of master planning currently, so that has not been discussed at present, but it certainly will be something that we'll consider as we move forward. Sorry, I can't give you more information on that, but it's so early in the process, but it's definitely something that we're going to consider.
And this is Ophelia Lee. Now, will there be a driving range out there?
It is a driving course where they are testing police officers on the track.
Yes.
Yeah, it is about 1,400 foot straightaway with turns. That will be the emergency course, and we'll be able to show you where that location will be on the site. And I also believe that the sections that we will show you of the street frontage, how it relates to Key Road, is a very important aspect. And I really quickly, it's not an issue of the trucks or cars creating noise, but I want to call your attention as we later on go to the new site plan as we've revised it, because I would like to call attention to the entrance to the site and our mitigation attempts to try to keep more traffic off of Key Road as they enter the project.
Before we do move forward to that portion of the conversation, are there any additional questions about what we just covered?
Yeah, this is Lily. I have one additional question about just the neighbors that you're considering in the noise analysis, and wanted to point out the latest site plan really puts all of the high noise facilities and the fire station, the shooting range right up against the metro. Sorry, it's loud here, but the metro detention center. Has there been any consideration? Has there been any consideration to the youth that are residing in that detention center and putting more, shifting where the noise is created on this site and shifting the types of noise that are created and then putting them right up against a youth facility like that?
I think our study and our focus has been on the mitigation of where those facilities are going to be. I think that the loudest probably component that you're talking about down there really is the firing range. I don't feel that the mock village and the training fire station will create the type of adverse noise. It is the firing range. And that's one we really need to study further and investigate what the noise effects are going to be. And it's just so we understand as well, this is a covered firing range. This is not an open field firing range. It's not fully covered in that it has no holes in it, but has sound baffled roof. Partially for sound, a lot for security. So that is something that we'll be considering as we go forward.
This is Allison Clark. I have a couple of quick questions to throw in here. With the explosives being removed from the property, does that include removal from the current range as well, or just being removed from the new development? And then in addition to that, with the, and this may be a little ahead of the game, but will there be some sort of scheduling or notification methods that will go out to the surrounding communities based on the document that was just up? Actually, you can see it on this map in the very top right corner of this map that's on screen now, just above the green. It's the grayed out area just above the green, a little further to the right. Yep. That is a subdivision. That's my subdivision right there. And then just on the other side, if you travel down Key Road from there, right here, exactly, you have the Starlight Heights neighborhood, and those two areas are residential. And while I certainly understand the concern for the detention center as well, we are residential versus industrial. And so I want to make sure that in this taking place, that there's some sort of system for scheduling, for notification to these communities. Our goal has always been to move the noise away from us, hence the concern for explosives being removed from the property, including the existing site, which is only 500 feet from the homes in this subdivision.
That's a great question. Marshall, you probably want to take that because we actually spoke about that issue and Marshall has that already planned.
And I also see Deputy Chief Sherbaum has his hand up.
I'd like to let Chief Sherbaum jump in first.
Yeah, good afternoon, everyone. Darren Sherbaum with the Atlanta Police Department. Allison, we are crafting in conjunction with Atlanta Fire Rescue a communication plan that will be encompassing to every neighborhood that is represented on this particular committee, and then that can be grown if needed. As we work through that communication plan, we'll be looking at the best means via digital communication, a monthly schedule, whatever we can do to give everyone a view of what is going on at the training center and when it will be occurring. So that will be part of this process, and that will be revised to make sure it's the best communication plan we have possible as we move forward with the training center. We do that now at the former location, 180 Southside Industrial, as well as with our current training partners at our present locations.
Wonderful, thank you. Are you also the person to answer the question about whether or not explosives are being removed altogether to include the current range?
So the current disposal of suspicious devices that is occurring at the present location, we are exploring other sites to move that to. Right now, it's not occurring at 2500 or 1500 Key Road, and the locations that we're looking at this time are not in this immediate area.
Okay. Do we have any additional questions? And thank you very much for that answer.
Allison, I have an additional question. It's Amy Taylor. And this is probably back at Marshall. You mentioned vehicle training. Is that going to be more like high-speed chase type of training, or is it just going to be like parking and stuff like that? Because we already have problems with the street racing going on around here. We don't want additional vehicle nuisance noise.
That would actually be a Chief Sherbaum question. He can speak to the usage of the EBOT course.
Yes, ma'am. The primary use of the course is for our officers to complete the state's prescribed driving course for proficiency, which is required for them to graduate from the training academy. That is a cone course that is showing the proficiency moving through narrow lanes, backing, and moving through curbs. The second portion of that is a braking course. Neither one of those have the revving of engines or any squealing of tires of that nature. The other portions of the course will be used for safe driving techniques, not only for the police department, for the other cities. It shows ability to move through areas, congested intersections, backing, those type of areas that we assess through our accident reviews of where we would like to instill better safe practicing. Most of those are at low speed. As you know, the department uses other methods outside of pursuits to respond to most individuals that are committing criminal offenses. So it is a very focused course that it encourages safe driving within city streets.
Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, if we don't have any additional questions, I would like for us to move forward with the site plan update so we can keep ourselves on track. Are there any additional questions, or are we ready to move forward?
Yeah, Madam Chair, I'm sorry. I have two really quick questions for Chief
Sure.
Sherbaum. The first is, will there be military vehicles or military type vehicles on site? And the second is, what is the highest caliber gun that you will be using on the ranges?
We'll have to get back with you on the type of calibers that we are currently using at the location. Anyone that has been a member of our Citizens Police Academy has visited our site that currently rests on Key Road. Those rescue vehicles that you see at that location that you see deployed for the Children's Parade, Christmas Parade, the Pride Parade, those are the same type of vehicles that will be here. Those are armored rescue vehicles that we maintain already on Key Road.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, ladies and gents, let's move forward into the site plan updates. Thank you all for your questions and for the answers to those questions. Bob Hughes, if you are ready, please take it from here.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, we're going to run through a few things that have evolved in the plan since our last meeting that came out of our conversation a couple of weeks ago. We're going to talk about some Constitution Road potential entrances. We have a Key Road parking area and community entrance. We've shifted the firing range a little bit. The explosives we just talked about have been removed. And then we'll look at the cross sections of the relationship of some of the improvements to Key Road. So Bree, with that, if you would click forward. So I'm going to take a minute for everybody, and a couple of people weren't here last time. This was the original concept plan. It was a larger footprint. We kind of talked about that a minute ago with the phase 1 environmental and phase 2 environmental studies. But it always had park, horse pasture, campus, and then what we call the more dangerous stuff tucked over in the corner over here. But if we click ahead on this, and we looked at this, and there were several other maps where we talked about this, where we have the darker areas are the more sensitive areas. And then we overlaid and adjusted the plan to be able to accommodate for that. So last time we were together, there was a little bit of conversation about, could the traffic on Fayetteville and particularly Key Road, and could we come off Constitution? I want to point out in the lower right corner of the detention facility, you see the dark gray of the floodplain there. If we come in there, we're going to have to be able to cross that floodplain. The point of saying that, I just wanted you to see that as we talk about the potential of that in a minute. So go ahead and click to the next slide, if you would. This is the plan we reviewed last time, the more illustrative. The park has grown, as Alan said, kind of everything east of the power line is now park, but we also have a larger piece of park that is coming down the streams past the existing ponds and sort of wraps around our core campus. And then we're really putting a campus in the park in this scenario. If you click to the next slide here, there's a couple of changes that we're illustrating. One, if you see the letter H on Constitution to the western edge of Constitution, yes. We have added a vehicle access point off Constitution back into the EVOC course, all the driving facilities, the shooting range, et cetera, so that all those larger vehicles that may be coming out here can access the site not off of Fayetteville or Key Road. And that would take a significant chunk of the traffic away from you guys. Additionally, if you look to the east of the detention center, we are exploring the ability to get across that floodplain without doing any damage, flooding wise or environmentally, and doing that. And if we can switch the main entrance to come in off Constitution. We may still want to continue to have a dialogue about whether there's the stables, they remain to the north as had been shown, whether there might be an access point there that might just be limited to the stables itself. But if we can get across that floodplain and we our fingers crossed we can. We've got a little work to do to prove it. Then we can flip both of the real entrances down to Constitution and get all that traffic off of Key Road for you guys. And, you know, we heard that loud and clear last time, and we went back to the drawing board to look at that. So the other major change is we did shift the firing range from behind on the north side of the detention center to west of it. The major reason for that is probably a belt and suspenders reason. You know, we do have projectiles that will be shot in there. They will hit the ground. And, you know, we're close to the creek there. Not that things wouldn't be picked up as they're supposed to, and we don't want any contamination. We just thought that should live a little bit further away from the stream. And so we did shift it to the west. It also makes it very easy for people who are coming in here to do their shooting practice to come in off of entrance H down there on Constitution Road and get right to where they're going. So those changes, you know, we think are things that we talked about with you guys, and we'd like to see if we can move forward with all of those. Then finally, if we click ahead here, I just wanted to show you this. The red lines here are showing proposed contours. So when we look at this and lay everything on the site, we want to make sure that it can be graded. We don't wind up with huge cuts and huge fills. The good thing about the EVOC course, which sits on that northern side there, that can slope. In fact, the training wants to take place on streets that mimic Atlanta's topography. And so we got plenty of streets that are 4 and 5 and 8 and 10% in this city. So we can slope it down the hill there, and that really allows us to relate well to Key Road. Everything else will step down the hill as we move to the detention facility. The campus will sit nice in the center there. So all this is really setting up nice, and you can see then how protected that larger park area is without the red contours in it. So if we look at this then, the next image, please, Bree. You know, this is Key Road today, and we had good conversation about this last week about what should this be? Well, one, it shouldn't have a fence right here, and it shouldn't be in this condition. I think we all agreed to that. And then it's a notion of, in some areas, we may want to keep it dense because we're trying to provide some screening. In other areas, if we got up, say, around where the horse barn and pasture was, we might want to open that up so you get a view into campus and into the horse pasture. So those things are possible. I don't think we have a strong feeling. It's not a right or wrong answer in some ways. It's working with you guys to say, yes, I'd like to see into the park here. No, I don't want to see the EVOC course. So that. But we also, click to the next slide if you would, cut some cross sections in here. And you see over on the lower left here, the 2 red lines, that is where these sections are cut. This shows Key Road at the top, and the grade actually rises up from Key Road over and back down to the EVOC course. We've stated that we really wanted to set a minimum 100-foot undisturbed buffer there. And what you see is, because the EVOC course is a straightaway and Key Road's moving away right there, at that point where we're closest to the intersection, where Key Road Fayetteville intersection is, we'd actually be more like 180 feet of buffer there. So really moving that away from the neighborhoods. As we move back to the southwest, we have 145 feet. Again, you can see the grade relationship. And then if you'll click to the next image, you can see only place where Fayetteville Road now is a little higher than the EVOC course is way down to that southwest end. The importance of this is that while we can use vegetation to visually screen something, the old expression is mass attenuates sound. And so by having that earth form come up and drop back down, that will attenuate a great deal of the sound coming from any vehicle. And again, there won't be siren zone. And believe me, I live on a high rise on Peachtree Street right by Piedmont Hospital. I hear the sirens, right? And so I would not want that for y'all. And so I think we've got a good setup here to continue to work with this and make it visually the right thing as we move through. the last thing, or maybe I'll stop here and ask some questions. We got one more thing that we want to talk to y'all about, but let's stop here, Chairwoman Clark, and see if there's any questions around, comments around any of this.
Sounds good. Accordingly, let's open up the floor for questions.
I just want to say, this is Amy Taylor. I just want to say this all sounds really good. If this actually comes to happen, it definitely feels much better than it has up until tonight.
Well, thank you for saying that. As we said last time, I hope we establish good lines of communication and dialogue where we're listening to real concerns, and y'all are doing a great job of expressing those, and we're trying to react to it.
Madam Chair, Madam Chair, this is Sharon Williams. Bob, I just want to say, I think you guys did a really good job in terms of being responsive. You pivoted really quickly, just given the plans that we saw last week. And so, like Amy, I'm hoping this is real, because it seems like we're really moving in the right direction. So thank you.
Thank you. And I'll to Jennifer, our project manager who's on the phone, a special thank you to her for all the work she's done in the last couple of weeks to do this.
Thank you, Jennifer.
Are these, Bob, this is Tori, are these maps and these drawings available after this meeting, or because they're hard to see? I'm trying to expand it, but are they available for us to go and look at again later?
Yes, I think the idea is that this is real information and we're really sharing it. So definitely, we will get it out to everybody.
Madam Chair, I'm happy to share that deck with the entire committee following this call.
That would be perfect. Thank you very much.
One thing, if Bree, if you could click back to the latest plan, I just wanted to, so this just kind of helps as we start to talk about, you can see it just in here where we do have this opened up a little bit. So to me, if this is what we think it could look like, I think that could be a nice sort of view off the road, and then we could be denser in here where we're just trying to shield this, open up views into the park area.
Thank you very much for that. I would like to, this is Allison Clark. I would like to ask a quick question. With the entrance potentially moving down to the Constitution side, at least for some of the training vehicles, will there remain an entrance on Key Road? I know initially we talked about what that campus view would look like from the street, and that is one of the more beautiful aspects of the facility. And so my curiosity would be whether or not that remains. And then also, as far as having the buffer along Key Road, does that still include the removal of the invasive growth and then potentially the planting of those native species?
We would definitely want to do that, and that's something over the whole site we need to talk about. But that's yes. The short answer is yes. I think in terms of the entrance to the barns, where we kind of got to on this, again, if we can make this second one across the floodplain work as the sort of main in and out entrance, that it could make sense to have an entrance that came in just to the barns. And then we could gate it in case there was ever some emergency reason to get out that way. We might have a second there, but they do load the horses up in the morning, but that will be one vehicle. I kind of thought anyway, I had 3 boys and I thought, God, my kids would love to see the horses go by every morning. So there's something kind of charming about that. And we can make sure that they don't go down the residential portion of Key Road, but go down Fayetteville and out that way. That's an easy operational thing to control. And then that would kind of have this open, pastoral relationship up the Key Road.
Okay, and I think, I didn't even realize there was the potential entrance for the pasture. I was referring more specifically to the entrance, I guess, I'm assuming somewhere over near where Y is in relation to the buildings or the main campus.
Yeah, no, there's no entrance over where that Y is. We have a
Okay.
small parking area where U is that we talked
Okay.
about. So there would be an area there. We want to talk about that a little bit more in a minute. Is that the right place, and how much parking do we really want to have here? And we'd love y'all's input on that. But then U would be, whether there's parking there or not, it would connect. You would come from, say, Key Road over to U, and there'd be a trail system running down that creek area and tying into the park. So we're seeing that center area as really more like park that we happen to be next to.
Okay, thank you very much for that.
This is Councilmember Shepherd. I want to say something else about the Key Road and the horses, access on Key Road. One of the things I know that the Horse Patrol does in the city of Atlanta, if they're not doing some major duty, they actually pick on a weekly basis. They're actually out in the community, just walking through the communities on their horses. It is one of the most beautiful things that you can see when the horses are actually on the street and they're not doing a job. They're just, it's 4 or 6 of them together and they're walking, coming through the community, and the kids and everybody go out, see them. They were just in my community last month in Adair Park, just patrolling and walking around in the community on the horses. And then I just saw them last week off of Memorial Drive in that area over there. And that's just something they do. So as a part of your asset was be having those horses there, that if they came up of Key Road and had access, they could actually just kind of patrol throughout the neighborhood. That would be a beautiful sight and something that the community would really feel really good about.
That's a great idea.
I absolutely love that. I know my kids would enjoy that.
I'm gonna come over and just watch it, right?
Well, and I also believe as we move through and if we make it to the section on security plans tonight, that's another added benefit for those of us in the area to have that additional presence.
But given that, if there's no other questions here, let's jump to the next phase of this so we can get to the security as well. Yeah, we're back to this diagram, which really is, again, illustrating how much park, the darker green we have. We have the medium green, which we're really by the EVOC course, which we're really considering kind of buffer edge, although we can have walkways along there, whatnot. But, and then click one more, let's just get there. What we wanted to do is begin to ask you guys, if we had the opportunity to do something in this area that is park, what is it that we should be doing or could be doing? You know, we know there's a lot of invasive species out there. There's a lot of kudzu. There's a lot of, we can replace that. You know, we can begin to build pieces of trail. When we knew there was a thing in the little dot there, kind of indicates where the parking lot is, but that's like 20 parking spaces in size. So if we start doing this, is 20 parking spaces going to be enough? Should we find another place for slightly more parking than that, or that does work? That still could be a pedestrian trailhead, if you would, that came into the park. So we'd really love to just start hearing from you guys a little bit as the neighborhoods around this park. What if we had an opportunity would y'all like to see us do?
I open up the floor. Please identify yourself so we know who's speaking.
This is Amy Taylor again. Something that's been kicked around is we'd like to see some kind of dog park installed, because a lot of people in the Starlight Heights neighborhood like to go in there and let their dogs running around and, you know, get those pups some exercise after they've been sitting in the house all day. And also another thing our community seems to like to do is have take their ATVs in there. So I don't know if there's any possibility for some kind of off-road track or situation. I don't know if that's, I just know the people will go in there and do those types of activities. As far as the parking situation goes, I think you might want to increase it a little bit more than 20. I know when people come in here to go camping and stuff, I live on the corner of Key and Harold. They will park all along my street on Harold and walk down there to go camping. So maybe even a camping situation is needed. I don't know. I'm just throwing some ideas out there at you. But those water bodies in there are absolutely gorgeous. So definitely make use of those as much as possible.
I have to say this with the water bodies. Yeah, and this is just one of those things, right? There are no natural lakes in the state of Georgia.
Yeah.
Everybody know that. So anytime we impound water, we're actually working against nature. And what it does is it creates the heat, it brings more heat to the water. So naturally, our fish around here would have been very cold water fish. That's why trout streams have regulations to protect them. And I'm not saying we should, but this is just one of those things where as we start talking about environmental and how we're going to go about certain things, it probably is worth just everybody saying, boy, yeah, I hear you, but I love them. They're beautiful. We're going to keep them, right? But it is not something that you'd want to keep from an environmental standpoint.
This is Tori again. I'd like to see walking trails. A lot of my community, we like to walk, and that would. I see you have trails, and I'm not sure if you're going to keep them natural or you're going to actually put like a paved walkway through that. That would be a great enhancement for us that we all have to drive to Grant Park or Piedmont Park, but that would be a great place to walk in that particular facility. Like where the T-zone is, all of those trails, that would be great to have some more walking trails. Is it going to connect to the other connection park that they're building on Boulder Crest Road? Is there?
Well, and you see the arrow down there, and that's clearly would be something that we should try and figure out how to, create a bigger network out of it, right? Okay. And so opportunities for trails, but opportunities for connectivity back to neighborhoods and the larger regional moving arounds, et cetera.
So Bob, this is Sharon. I just want to say I agree with that sentiment. And I think for us to really make the best decision or to really leverage the best brainstorming here is to show us that connection between this to what used to be Black Hall. I think it's going to be called something else now, the Michelle Obama Park or anywhere else. I think as we look at it collectively, I would need to see the connections in order to finalize this.
Yeah.
That's just the way my brain works.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great idea. I actually live a quarter mile from a piece of the Beltline, but I walk down to it and I'm at Ardmore Park in the Beltline. Then I go under railroad track and I'm at Tanya Creek Park. And then I go under Collier and I'm at Louise Howard Park. And then I hit a point and I'm at Atlanta Memorial Park. So that sense of being able to move from space to space to space and go for long walks is really nice.
If I could jump in, this is Allison Clark. I would like to suggest that we take some time between now and the next meeting to do some brainstorming on what all we would like to see. And it also gives us an opportunity to reach out to our individual communities and even the broader communities to determine sort of the types of things that people are generally interested in seeing. And perhaps we can put this into the December 7th meeting for more consideration with the, with full thought behind it. And if for any reason, because this is kind of an all-encompassing conversation, if for some reason it cannot fit into that meeting, then we will pull together in an entirely separate meeting so that we can start to discuss the connections, because there's so much happening in this area and so much potential for connection.
And we would love to, help y'all with that. And if it's valuable, we can put together kind of a questionnaire or something to send to you guys and say, here's some things you might want to think about. For instance, if you did something like even if this was all park, where do people go to the restroom when they come to the park, right? So suddenly now you're really into it. We just finished we did the Grant Park deck and we did West Side Park for the city, and I've been on the board of Piedmont Park Conservancy for 15 years. So I tell people I learned more about designing parks by trying to operate one than I ever learned in school. So there's just a lot of fundamentals that come with it. And you make it nicer, more people want to come, right? So it's, thinking through all those things are going to be important for y'all.
This is Lily. I think just one other thing to really keep in mind as we talk about this brainstorm is like, how does this green space activation serve the community?
Yes.
And I think there's a lot of maybe assumed value of recreation, whereas there could be like material value of jobs training, new economic opportunities that would be developed purely just by developing this park space into something usable, or like this defunct derelict space into something usable. And I love the like Sharon's idea of the connectivity with the bike trails, because essentially we need that connectivity in order for this space to be usable as like any sort of cycling hub. Right now, you basically park at the trail entrance that's off of APF's property. It's on the park side, and then you could only go one direction. You can't go trail the other direction because it's not connected, because this site stands in the way. So if this could be the connector and the first piece that goes towards the belt line, that could be awesome. But we've got to really think about how that gets incorporated into this plan now, rather than being like a pushed off thing. So thanks for bringing the brainstorm up.
Yeah, definitely on that. The power line here is the power line that goes all the way up to Chosewood Park on the belt line. So there's potential for connectivity north. There's potential connectivity down to the South River. This can, it's a park, but if it can be the genesis of a park into a larger idea, I think is what the potential upside for this is.
Hey,
go ahead, Nicole.
Oh, okay. Just a really quick question. And thank you so much, Bob and team, for this great work. As far as like I'm kind of curious what it looks like for like the differentiation or separation of public recreational space and then like the police training. Are there going to be like fences, or sort of what's that separation going to look like?
Yeah, so all the area that we're talking about, that's the I call it the dangerous stuff, where vehicles are moving around and all that stuff, that will be fenced off. But we see the fence occurring on the edge of our sort of pumpkin color. That's where the fence would be, not out on the edge of like Key Road. So we want people to walk down through this park. We just don't want them to walk into a course where somebody's backing up a fire truck. That's a recipe for disaster. The campus itself, I know people who live next to university campuses and use them as their walking environment. So the whole idea that somebody could walk along the horse pasture and the sidewalk along the entry drive, and that connects seamlessly to a park trail, I think there's nothing antithetical about that at all.
Sure. Thank you.
If we've asked all of our questions, I would like to see if we can't jump into the security plans before we run short on time. However, I still will ask if you all will brainstorm. I'm going to throw myself out here. I will probably regret this, but you all have my email address. Please feel free to forward ideas along so that we can get them, before all of the right people ahead of the next meeting, so that we can figure out how we can really broaden that scope. I will make a quick mention. I think it was asked, the connection to some of the existing trails just a moment ago. And I will point out, and I don't have control of the map. So if whoever has the control of the mouse can point to, if you go, so the arrow that is pointing out to show the connectivity to the existing trail network, if you would go to the tip of that arrow and then just go straight up. If you continue up to the green area and then move just slightly to the right, just outside of that green area. Okay, that area there is slated to be the Michelle Obama Park, and the trailhead for the park is going to move actually ironically right where the mouse is. If you move just back to the right again, the trailhead will be right there. And so one curiosity would be whether or not there is an opportunity for the Atlanta lands to connect over to that portion of the site, because then it gives access to so many trails that are already in existence. And so as you all brainstorm, please keep in mind that location. I will try to pull together some of the maps that I have to show a little bit more of what that looks like.
That would be fantastic. And the short answer to that is absolutely that we could bridge across there. So those are the kind of things that we all know what's going on in the area so much better than we do, to be able to bring that information forward. And then if you'd like, again, I'd love to volunteer that we might put together a one-pager of questions, send it to you, Chairwoman, and then you can disseminate it to people, and it may just help everybody in their brainstorming.
Absolutely, I'm willing to do it. All right, if we can, and hopefully we won't run too far over, I can tell you now, based on where we stand, it looks like we're probably going to run 5, maybe 10 minutes over. If you guys can bear with us, then it looks like we can finish out and still cover the security plans. With that, Mr. Freeman, can you take on the presentation about the upcoming security plans?
Sure, this will actually be very easy. This will be and very quick. This will actually be a two-part kind of discussion here, if you will. So we have started the process of identifying the potential cameras or license plate readers for the area. This is something that we heard immediately in the beginning from a lot of our discussions, was about the concern for the increase in pedestrians potentially visiting the areas and the impact to each of the neighborhoods. I'm well aware that right now people are parking in front of many of your houses in order to go into this area. So I think that everyone is looking for this development to help ease a little bit of the burden that you guys have already. So this identifying of LPR locations has taken, frankly, a little bit longer than we anticipated, because it involves not only going out and scoping out what is in theory available or accessible. It is also taken into consideration real estate with Georgia Power and with the lighting poles and with the actual wooden poles that are on the streets. And so it's a little bit longer process, but either way, the team has already went out and they have identified the locations that you see there. And they have made a recommendation for 2 LPRs at the Constitution Road and Boulder Crest Road, pointing in 2 different directions. 1 LPR on Old Constitution and Constitution Road, 1 LPR at Key Road and Woodham Way, and then 2 LPRs at Key Road and Boulder Drive. And from here, on tomorrow morning at 10:30, we will do another site visit with the Georgia Power team, and we will start to move into a couple of the neighborhoods that are over there. Specifically, Starlight Heights is on the agenda for tomorrow, and we will also move into a couple of others where they will be again identifying what poles are actually possible, and then we will again move forward with, after all of these locations have been spec'd out, in which we are confident that by our December meeting, we will be able to come back with a full-on plan for these. We will advance to permitting and installation with Flock. And at that point, we'll be able to talk with each of you all on, again, what does that look like for your respective community, having access to the license plate reads and the data from each of these devices. And so with that, I'm happy to also take any questions.
Well, if you all don't mind, I would like to ask one thing that I see, and first of all, thank you for the consideration and the cameras in place to protect the surrounding neighborhoods. I am curious to know, because there is an impact on the Gates at Boulder Crest as well as East Side Walks community being so close, is there any investigation going on relative to putting cameras at or near the entrances to those communities? I can see areas where people will cut through. Yes. And so I'm curious to know if that can be included.
Yep, it definitely can. And it is on the plan to do. They just kind of started in the center there, and then they've been kind of identifying available inventory on poles, because what I have been educated in this process is that basically Georgia Power, and there's tons of things from the communications perspective and utility work that is on these poles, and so they are very thoughtful about what poles can take an actual device, and so they come up with this whole measuring stick, and they can kind of say, no, this pole already has too much real estate or too much, going on there, so they don't have the ability to do that. So in those scenarios, we will be looking at what potential do we have to drop or insert poles there to again accomplish the same goal.
Perfect. Thank you very much for that answer. Are there any additional questions?
I have a quick question.
Who's speaking?
I'm sorry, Amy Taylor.
Thank you.
I always forget, sorry.
I feel like I recognize your voice most of the time, but that time you threw me for a loop.
Sorry. Just real quick, who's going to be responsible for maintaining these cameras and, long after the building is done and things are all in place, and then two years down the road, the cameras go out? Who's going to be responsible for taking care of that equipment, making sure it's up and functioning,
Sure.
Decades into the future, what have you?
Yep. Thank you, Amy. So each of the cameras will actually come with a full-on maintenance plan from the provider. So when you do these, if you guys have any, if you guys are familiar with, there's a lot of different LPRs out there, a lot of different ways to again put one up. Specifically, the vendor that we are looking at for a lot of these will be Flock. Because there is a lease that happens on those devices, and that lease comes with full-on maintenance and care for each of the devices. And so what we will be coming back to you all with is there will be a certain subset of these devices in which will be owned and managed forever, essentially, by the Police Foundation. And then we are considering here for each of the specific neighborhoods around here, we will ultimately come back to you all with a proposal on, we would again pay for the maintenance and the care and the coverage of each of those devices for a certain amount of time. And at that point, we will come back to this committee and kind of talk that through. But again, it won't be a year or so, it will be, for quite a while.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Oh, I'm sorry, Amy Taylor still. Now, are these cameras going to be pointed strictly at the road, or are they going to be looking at people's houses or properties? I'm sure there's going to be a little bit of that, but so what are these cameras looking at exactly, I guess is what I'm getting at.
Sure. So what we have proposed so far are what's called LPRs. They are license plate readers. They actually they only take snapshots of tags of automobiles. They don't actually do surveillance. And so they're not looking inside of a house. They're actually looking for vehicle license tags.
Okay. Thank you. I wasn't clear on that.
Sure.
Yeah, great question, Siri. This is Lily Planets. I was just maybe on the same line of thinking, wondering, like, how does reading these license plates and collecting this data translate to like a community benefit that has been asked for by this committee? Because like it sounds a little bit like they're going to get some cameras that are like the data is going to get turned over to them somehow to do something with. And I just am not really seeing a through line between collecting license plate data and like preventing people from parking on these streets, or if that's really even the concern.
Sure. So the license tag readers, they are actually, again, a big security benefit to the police department. And obviously Deputy Chief Sherbaum can speak a little bit more to this, but throughout our region, there are thousands of license plate readers around. And what they are doing is reading the tags, they're bouncing them against what's called a hot list. That hot list could have a potential person that is wanted. There could be an Amber Alert for a vehicle. There could be a suspect for a murder. There could be any other incident in which their tag has been flagged. And at that point, it sends a notification to the police department that that person has passed that license tag reader. And so I'll ask Chief Sherbaum to comment any further on it. But from my perspective, that would be my answer.
Hello, everyone. This is Darren again. That's correct, Marshall. Whenever we have an interest in locating a vehicle, be it an individual who's wanted for a serious crime, an Alzheimer's patient that may have left home, we place a license plate number in the system. Same thing as we have done. We've asked all of our officers to be on the lookout, a BOLO. Many times it has also been disseminated through our social media. If the vehicle passes, it lets us know the vehicle's in the area. Our officers go to that area to attempt to locate the vehicle. Many times a stolen vehicle is still being used to commit criminal acts. So it's in the best interest of the public that the occupants of that vehicle be stopped and the vehicle be recovered before it can be used for any further criminal activity.
Just to add my 2 cents, this is Allison Clark, to add my 2 cents in terms of a response as somebody who asked that these cameras be an option for the communities, for the surrounding communities. One thing that is of concern to us is any increased crime or presence in the area. And so with us in particular, a lot of us have cameras on our homes and you may see a particular vehicle, but you don't get a tag number associated with that vehicle. Having these cameras or I believe LPRs, you know, focused just outside of our communities and along the way, if we have some basic information to go off of, it also gives us a way to actually identify the vehicle that may have been associated with whatever may have taken place. So from a community perspective, that's at least my view on one of the reasons that we wanted to see this.
And Madam Chair, I just wanted to also add, this is Sharon Williams, that our community has had several conversations around getting these cameras in our community. They use Eastside Walk as a turnaround because it's just a circle around the entire community. We've seen an increase in cars being broken into, houses being broken into, mailboxes being broken into. So this is something our community has specifically mentioned even before we knew this effort was going on. And we were trying to figure out a way to get these cameras into our community to help out. So thank you.
Definitely a huge thank you to the Police Foundation for your willingness to add this level of protection and security for our area, you know, with the increased traffic and the all of the amenities that are coming to the area that will draw individuals out here. This is greatly appreciated. Are there any additional questions that we can move forward with at this time? We are right at 7:31, so we're almost ready to wrap if you all have no more questions.
Amy Taylor again. I know I'm kind of dominating, I'm sorry, but
before you do jump back in, Amy, just real quick, just because we've tried to make an opportunity for everyone to get a question in before we circle back. I will come right back to you in just a moment, but is there anyone else that had a question that they did not get an opportunity to ask?
I have a question, Jacqueline Rainey.
Okay. Oh, Jacqueline, you're muted.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
In reference to the security cameras or the cameras in general, in our area, there are some cameras, police cameras on different intersections. And are you all planning to do that in this area? And also for the general development itself, the police training facility, you're going to have different kinds of security there also, aren't you?
That is correct. We will definitely have different types of level of security at the actual facility. It's something that we will, again, begin to dive in on the programming of it as well. And then to answer your question, yes, this is exactly what we're talking about. Many of you, again, on the Atlanta side are 100% familiar with the Operation Shield camera network, in which we have thousands of cameras and licensed tag readers throughout the city. And so this is exactly what we're talking about, just expanding that over into this area as well.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Thank you for that question. Are there any additional questions before I circle back to Ms. Taylor? Okay, Amy, the floor is yours.
Thanks. Back to Marshall, talking about security. We've kind of talked about some community engagement with, I guess, cadets is the right way to say it. Is there going to be any kind of programming where they actually come in and police the neighborhoods or help deter the crime that's going on, or just kind of helping us since we're helping you kind of thing, scratching each other's back, because we do have quite a bit of issues going on with crime. Just last week, somebody didn't try, they stole gas out of my teenager's car in my driveway. So, you know, I mean, we've got issues here that we need help with. Are you guys going to be helping us with that?
So it's a two-part answer from my perspective, and Chief Shearbaum can definitely jump in after myself. But so the program in which we spoke about before is definitely slated to be discussed on the agenda for the next meeting, and we talked about us doing some sort of partnering for a cadet program at the surrounding community high schools and middle schools. And that is something that we, again, are committed to doing, to developing some full out partnership with the educational system around. And that will obviously, again, help to be a community policing tool in which these youth can continue to participate within this facility and public safety on the police and the fire rescue side. And then second to that, I would say for the answer about deterrence, obviously having the facility and having, again, a larger presence of officers within the area, I believe would, again, help with the deterrence, as well as mounted patrol, as you heard Councilmember Shepherd reference earlier. But as far as patrolling neighborhoods, that wouldn't be, frankly, APD's position from my seat. And again, Chief can talk about this, but it wouldn't be APD's position. Also, keep in mind that this is also DeKalb County and not the city of Atlanta. And so that would fall on DeKalb PD.
That's correct, Marshall. We'll obviously patrol resources in the area. That is the Atlanta side will be coming from the local police zone. We do use our recruits in a variety of community engagement initiatives. You will see them throughout the city as part of their training in community give back sessions. We also conduct some of our training out in various communities. If you're going past Atlanta Metropolitan College, you will actually see them running as part of their formations in the neighborhoods and the streets. So the very visibility of the police center, officers coming there for a variety of training functions, is going to increase a police presence in the area that stretches beyond the Atlanta neighborhoods and will be visible in the area. Then we work very closely with our partners at DeKalb Police Department to ensure that we're sharing information. We receive their bolos as well. So just the police presence that you would see of individuals coming and going throughout the day would invariably enhance the safety of the neighborhood.
Thank you for those answers and for all of the questions. We are now at 7:36 p.m. So again, I am going to throw myself down on this sword and say, if you have additional questions, please forward them over to me at your earliest convenience, or to Mr. Freeman directly, and we will do everything that we can to make sure your questions get in front of the right people and back to you, or are addressed at the upcoming meeting on December the 7th. I just want to go with a couple of closing remarks before we head out for the evening. I want to remind each and every one of you to check your email for information on the site visit. All of the logistics, etc., will be sent to you. So make sure that you are paying attention to that. Our next meeting and our final meeting of this year is on December the 7th, same time, 6 p.m. via Zoom. And then if you will, follow up on any items that you want to consider in terms of work with the neighborhood schools. We will also be examining the Fayetteville Road and the Key Road intersection and tie up any outstanding items before the holiday. So if you all can provide some feedback ahead of those meetings, so we can make sure that we use that hour and a half wisely and get through our agenda, because we'll have quite a bit to cover at this point. Are there any additional remarks? Before we close out, I do want to give a quick shout out. Braves did it. I'd like to think we willed them along. All right, if there are no additional remarks, I would like to give a huge thank you to all of the presenters tonight. You all did an absolutely outstanding job, and I also am very pleased with all of the questions and comments and advice that have come from this committee. Things are pulling together really nicely, and I think that we are making some headway. To the Police Foundation, thank you so very much. I think in speaking for the group, I can say we feel heard based on some of the commentary from the last meeting and the updates provided today. So I think, overall, I think we're all feeling pretty optimistic about what this process can offer. So with that, I will call the meeting adjourned here at 7:38 p.m. and look forward to seeing you all on December 7th.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Good night.